Thrag just hit Nolan so hard with a single punch that the wind-up pulled him in before his fist even connected.
More!
After 4 seasons of hearing how terrifying Thrag is, he just proved every word of it. This is Invincible Season 4, Episode 7, which covers issues 75 and 76 of the Invincible comics, a planet being blown up, the death of a major character, and one change from the source material that I think reframes Nolan's entire arc across this show. Let's get into it. For those of you new here, I'm breaking down Invincible scene by scene, comparing everything to the source material and covering all the Easter eggs and details you might have missed. I'm Shalon, this is the Binge Zone, and that sounds like your kind of breakdown. Hit that subscribe button, but now we need to talk about the Viltrum Empire. The episode opens somewhere we've never seen before in the show, the Viltrumite Empire at its height. We see a group of aliens called the Renolians sabotaging Viltrumite mining operations, and General Craig's immediate suggestion is to cull the entire population. But Thaddeus disagrees, and for the first time ever, we see Emperor Argyle alive. What makes this opening scene so interesting is what it establishes about Thaddeus. In a culture that defines strength as the willingness to destroy anything weaker than yourself, Thaddeus is an anomaly. What's even weirder is Thrag described Thaddeus as one of the most ruthless of his company, the strongest among them, but yet after years in the lay quadrant, he comes back talking about mercy. To someone like Thrag and the Viltrumites, that's just a disease. This entire sequence is show exclusive. The comics have really never showed us the glory days of Viltrum this way. We then get the most interesting scene in the flashback, Thrag and Argyle talking in private. Thrag tells Argyle that he fought side by side with Thaddeus, and Thaddeus was the strongest of their company and the most ruthless. But now Thaddeus has grown weak, talking about stuff like mercy and other nonsense. So Argyle tells Thrag if he believes Thaddeus' weakness is threatening the Empire, then Thrag should take action. But Thrag actually declines. Think about that for a second. Thrag is the strongest Viltrumite maybe ever, the person who will later rip a hole straight through Nolan's chest without breaking a sweat. But when given direct permission by the Emperor to act against Thaddeus, he says no, almost like he's afraid of him. This is entirely show created and a little weird, especially after we see what Thrag does to Thaddeus, but it does establish for all of Thrag's power, Thrag recognizes something in Thaddeus that he did not want to test. And it makes what happens to the Viltrumites even more interesting, because Thaddeus ends up assassinating Emperor Argyle. The comics never really get into this in detail, but we knew it happened. But seeing it happen after watching Thrag specifically decline to stop Thaddeus in the first place turns the whole thing into something more tragic. Thrag had the chance to stop Thaddeus. He chose not to take it. Everything that follows, the crumbling of Viltrum, the Civil War, the death toll, the Scourge virus, all traces back to that one decision, and I wonder if that's why Thrag bears so much responsibility for the Viltrumites. We then get to the funeral of Emperor Argyle. That's also when Thrag takes control of the Viltrum Empire until one of Argyle's heirs can be found. This is where things get real wild, because in issue 102 of the comic, when Thrag explains to Nolan how he consolidated power after Argyle's death, it's pretty different than the way he does it in the show. In the show, he killed somebody he considered weak, and then he commanded every remaining Viltrumite to fight each other in a planet-wide battle royale to weed out the weaklings. It was so brutal. It was raining blood. Everyone was a part of this battle royale. It made the Royal Rumble look like child's play. Even kids were involved. By the way, does anyone get the sense that those kids never liked that one kid? Because they jumped the shit out of him. The key difference between the comics and the show here is that in the comics, Thrag tells Nolan that this takes about a century to accomplish, but in the show, it looks like it only took one night. But the best part about all this, well, almost the best part, was that for just a moment in the show, you can see Conquest squaring up to fight Thrag. I'm not gonna lie, I wanted that fight. Why did Amazon play with my emotions like this? The show teased it and it did not deliver, and I'm still processing that. Even though after this episode, it's pretty evident that Thrag would have dog-walked Conquest, I still wanted to see it. After the purge, Thrag addresses what is left of his empire, and he tells them all is ours. Everything in the universe belongs to the Viltrumites. It's exactly what you would expect a man who just killed half his own people to say. We then flash forward to the present day. Thrag sits alone in an empty throne room on a planet that looks less like an empire and more like a tomb. Thrag inherited one of the most powerful civilizations in the universe, and through his own purge, his own need to consolidate absolute power, he bled it dry. He did not lose Viltrum to the Coalition. He actually lost it to himself, years before this episode even began. We then switch to the Coalition, and Thaddeus is giving the Coalition their mission. The Viltrumites are regrouping on Viltrum, and this is the moment to strike. In issue 75 of the comic, this same briefing happens to the same group, but it's shorter and quite frankly looks better. But I'm not here to rag on Invincible's animation, but the comic books do look 10 times better. We then see Mark record a message to Eve in case something happens, He tells her they're going after Thrag and only like 3 other Viltrumites. And it's going to be pretty much Thrag plus 3 versus the 8 of them, so it should be fine. 1, he was wrong. And 2, he mentions how Nolan is afraid of Thrag because Thrag was not just any Viltrumite, as we're going to see later. He is the strongest Viltrumite. He was bred from birth as the strongest Viltrumite ever. This whole recording to Eve doesn't happen in the comics. In the comics, actually what Mark does is he has a conversation with Nolan. In the comics, Nolan mentions to Mark that if they survive the fight with Thrag, that Nolan is planning to move to Thaddeus. The show cuts this entirely, which either means that they are planning something different or the show is not following that thread from the source material at all. And in the same issue, in the comics, instead of facing Thrag plus 3 other Viltrumites, they actually know that they're heading to face dozens of Viltrumites, not just Thrag. The show dramatically reduces the number of Viltrumites. I think they did that specifically to put the spotlight on Thrag to show just how powerful Thrag is. And I'm so glad they did that, because when we get to Thrag,
my final meal will be my own blood as I choke on it, breathing my last breath.
But before then, can we talk about Battle Beast for a second? I think he just steals every scene that he's in. And I want to ask you something. If you had one last meal before going into battle against Thrag, what would yours be? Mine would absolutely be Caribbean grilled lobster. Shout out to my boy Oliver. But drop yours in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Back on the ship, Thaddeus is talking to Nolan. Thaddeus says he wants to wipe out every trace of the Viltrumites from the universe. Nolan points out that Mark and Oliver are part Viltrumite, and Thaddeus does not answer him. The silence is doing everything. We know that Thaddeus has an upgraded Scourge virus, and Thaddeus has always been framed as the moral center of this war. But when it comes to Viltrumites, something is just different. He seems to really hate his people. When they leave their ship behind to approach the planet, it mirrors the approach in the comics, but in the show, Nolan explains the ring of bodies surrounding Viltrum, why they're there, and what they mean. In issue 75 of the comic, it's Thaddeus who gives this explanation, not Nolan. This is the second time in this episode the show has deliberately flipped who delivers a key piece of information between these two characters, but it's when they make it through the ring and Thrag is just floating there alone, waiting, aura farming hard as hell. In issue 75 of the comic, the Viltrumites come charging out of Viltrum with Thrag leading the attack, and it was a full frontal assault with dozens of them. But in the show, Thrag is just there, stationary, watching. The other Viltrumites hidden in the ring of bodies ambush the coalition from behind. In the comics, Thrag is actually in the heat of the battle as soon as it starts, trading blows with Nolan. Show Thrag is the boss, and this made him way more terrifying because it means every brutal thing we see him do is not him fighting at full power. This entire space battle is awesome though, with scenes taken right out of the comic pages, but it's Space Racer who's the actual MVP of this entire war. He arrives with his Infinity Ray, the most overpowered weapon in this universe, and the Ragnar aliens, who have control collars now. This is pulled directly from the comics right down to the collars. The Ragnar absolutely ripped through the Viltrumites, and in that moment, you actually think, maybe this is manageable. They might be able to win. And then Nolan rushes Thrag. Thrag dodges and hits Nolan once. And by the way, hit is an understatement. He one-shot smashed Nolan. Nolan falls straight through the atmosphere, crashes to the surface of Viltrum, and when Nolan looks up, Thrag is already there, waiting for him. He moved faster than Nolan, who fell through the atmosphere of an entire planet. In the comics, Thrag is more active in the larger fight, trading blows. But here, he's just a different beast altogether. We then move into a scene that's not in the comics at all. On the surface of Viltrum, Thrag doesn't immediately finish Nolan off. He talks to him. He tells Nolan he's trying to restore Viltrum to what it was, and he offers Nolan a choice. Join them, because Thaddeus cannot be trusted to stop before he kills Nolan's own children. And he's not wrong. We just watched Thaddeus go silent when asked about Mark and Oliver, but Nolan does not agree with Thrag, and then Thrag just stops being diplomatic altogether. And when he cocks his fist, the sheer force of the wind-up pulls Nolan towards the punch before it even lands, and that hit sends him straight past the rings of Viltrum entirely. Talk about power. Think about what the show just added here. Comic Thrag just fights, but show Thrag tried to reason first, even though he's more powerful than all of them. He's still a monster, but he's a monster who offered Nolan the deal first. That makes him more dangerous, but let's be for real. It's his power level that really sets him apart and makes him the most dangerous. Because when Thrag goes on the offensive, Oliver gets ripped apart. Arm and jaw gone. This happens in the comic too. In issue 75 of the comic, when Oliver tries to use his black hole joke on Thrag, Thrag actually clowns him, trash talks him, makes a joke of it before tearing him apart. But in the show, he just tells Oliver that he's a failure. And the fact that he looked at Mark and told Mark that Oliver is not his brother, Oliver's a failure because he's half Thraxan, which makes him weak by Viltrumite definition. This is straight Viltrumite racism on display. It's the fact that he's so vicious. And Oliver, who spent all of episode 6 connecting with Nolan, finally finding where he belongs, and Thrag just reduces him to his Thraxan bloodline in seconds. We then see Mark tell Thrag that he killed Conquest, so he will kill Thrag too. Everyone was shocked. Everyone's like, Mark killed Conquest? This is the fight we've been waiting to see. And Thrag says, show me. And when Mark attacks, Thrag blocks it with his forehead. Now, this specific forehead block actually comes from issue 76 in the comics. It happens in a different fight between Mark and Thrag that takes place after the whole planet destroying stuff, which we need to get into. But first, Battle Beast. In the comics, Thrag called the Battle Beast a nuisance at best, which at least acknowledges the threat. In the show, Thrag simply says nope and tosses him aside. Again, the show is making Thrag meaningfully more powerful than his comic book counterpart. And then we get the end of Viltrum, which is similar and different to how they did it in issue 75 of the comics. In issue 75 of the Invincible comic, it's Thaddeus who comes up with the plan to destroy Viltrum. Thaddeus who leads Nolan and Mark. Space Racer still shoots his Infinity Ray at the center of the planet. And Thaddeus takes Mark and Nolan to fly into the core and finish the job. In the show, it's Nolan who leads it. Nolan is the one who has Space Racer fire. Nolan is the one who takes Mark and Thaddeus and flies them into the core. Nolan is the one who destroys Viltrum in the show. All the dialogue flips throughout the episode make complete sense. The show has been repositioning Nolan as the agent of Viltrum's destruction from the very beginning of this episode, giving him the lines that Thaddeus had in the comics, moving his role around, and I think it makes destroying Viltrum hit closer to home. Because in season 1 of Invincible, Nolan was a Viltrumite through and through. He was their agent on Earth, he believed in them, he killed for them. And at the end of season 4, episode 7, he's the one who destroys his own homeworld. This is this show's version of his character arc, and I actually like it. I will say though, they tried to make the explosion look as epic as they could, but we know the problem with Invincible is animation already. They should have just went all in and made it look amazing instead of giving us this choppy animation. But shit really hits the fan after the explosion. Thrag chooses death and rips Thaddeus' head from his body. Thaddeus killed Argyle at the start of this episode, and that was centuries ago. And Thrag could have stopped it if he had acted, but now he finally avenges Emperor Argyle, and everything he did, every person he killed, the whole purge, the battle royale, the empty throne room, it was all in service of finishing Thaddeus, and he finally done it. Circle complete. After killing Thaddeus, Thrag and the remaining Viltrumites just beat everyone's ass. Space Racer runs, Tech Jacket runs, Alan runs, and Thrag beats the dog shit out of Nolan and Mark, rips a hole through Nolan's body, which happens exactly the same way in issue 76 of the comics, before beating the dog shit out of Mark. And then he spares them, all of them, and the Viltrumites allow it. In issue 76 of the comics, after Thrag spares Mark, Krieg defies Thrag's orders to spare Mark and actually tries to attack them. Thrag stops him because Thrag says he will need them soon if the Viltrumites are to survive. This is a small change that I think was going to make a big difference later on, but it also reinforces Thrag's power. No one questions Thrag's decisions. I mean, unless you want Thrag to beat your ass. So Thrag keeps them alive, and that's because he has a plan for them. They just don't know what it is yet. The episode flash forwards to 2 weeks later. Mark wakes up, Nolan's alive, Oliver's alive. He's messed up, but he's alive. And Alan is the new leader of the coalition now that Thaddeus is dead. The war is over and nobody knows where the Viltrumites went. But Mark figures it out and thinks they went to Earth. This ending is taken beat for beat from issue 76 of the Invincible comic. So that means in episode 8, we're going back to Earth to face the Viltrumites. So that is Invincible season 4, episode 7. They destroy the planet, but the show gave us a version of Thrag that seems to be more powerful than the comic book version. And it was genuinely satisfying. But anyway, guys, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my episode 8 breakdown when it drops. And until next time, peace.